opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Return the Jewels. Also, there's explicit language. Welcome, everybody, to the 10th episode of Return the Jewels, the podcast. Today was a good one. Today was a good, so we have a good interview with my friend Mark Teodosio. He created a comic book series called The Realest Bayani, about a Filipino street hero and just a whole fictional world around that, and deals with representation, authenticity, deprogramming, the vestigial effects of colonialism, all of that. Definitely check him out. Couple technical issues. We had Mark's connection was a bit. There's a lot of technical difficulties there, so it's a bit choppy. And he's a busy dude, putting out a lot of stuff. So we only had a few minutes with him. But after the interview, Fani and I did kind of a breakdown, and we kind of just reflected on things. But in the interview itself was good because we touched on things about him growing up and just the tone he's establishing with why he's doing what he's doing, and getting into uh, your own cultural identity later on in life. And that's kind of like a pattern we find with a lot of people, first generation, that are in this age group, 30s ish. And but after the interview, we did a good breakdown, and Fanny and I got a little bit introspective about what we're doing with this podcast and this brand and what we want to do. um there's a lot of things to be excited about, that what we want to do with this. And right now I'm feeling it feels very daunting, and I have a lot of anxiety about it, but that's okay, because there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of good to be done, and the work itself is good. So that's really what matters. um but take what you can from this episode. It was good to just establish this relationship for the viewers with our friend Mark, and try to get into this comic book world. And I'm sure the comic book world's got its own issues, and we want to explore those. And we'll have him on again, and maybe we'll get into panels, but we'll figure it out.
What was his name? What was your name, bro?
Afani? Fani,
Alfani,
it's
got
like a
you.
PH, yeah.
Okay. So we have Mark here today.
Alfani. It's Bonnie.
Funny, yeah. Funny in love, yeah. So we have Mark here. Mark Teodosio. Did I say that right?
Yep, you did, bro.
Thank you. All right, cool. Yeah, because I ask every episode. I don't know if you listen to one. I have to ask about the correct pronunciation, because, like, it's a thing about if you're a minority in this country, that you kind of anglicize your last name to 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 make it easier for people.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I am in gallery mode. Okay, yeah. Never mind. Whatever. To make it easier for people. So I guess you probably haven't had too many issues with people pronouncing your name, or have you ever had
Oh
to
no,
do
I
that?
got called. I got called Tostitos. I got called Teodosio.
Teodosio was it like
They
seven
were
times?
calling me Tarantino sometimes. They're like Mark Tarantino. I'm like, what?
Oh man, that must have been cooler when Kill Bill came out, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hilarious.
Yo, so okay, so I know we gotta be really quick with this one. So what so you create comic books, you rap, and you do a lot of community work in the Filipino community. And so I know that the aim really of the things that you do are not only to give back to the community, but to uplift the community and put it more into a perspective. So, I know we had a talk before earlier about how, like, you could say everything about what you do and your product and what you write, but like people really looked at like the long form stuff like this for like your tone for the author, the artist tone. So it's like,
Right.
so could you talk about like, and tell me if I'm saying this wrong. So the series is called the Realest Bayani.
Bayani, yeah.
Bayani,
The
okay.
realist Bayani.
And Bayani means hero, right? In Tagalog.
Bayani means hero or national icon in
Okay.
Tagalog
And
in
so
the
what?
Philippines.
And you came up with this when you were how old?
Like yesterday, like last year, like 2017.
For real? Yeah, yeah. No, I was seeing that. I just wanted.
See,
Had you done comic stuff before? Oh no, I think we had.
so I was like, I used to go by Mark.
Oh, did
I
we?
sneezed and like brought us back like how many minutes?
Yeah, no, I think we had like a
It was
technical.
my sneeze, bro.
That's so funny.
I I sneezed like the last dragon.
Yo, that's so funny. You sneezed and sent the recording back in time. I had an idea way back way back when for like an Adult Swim type show called Time Gorilla, where he just like throws things in a fit, but they go back in time and like hit some historical figure and affect the course of history somehow. And like I don't know. Anyways,
Oh, Kong like Donkey Kong storyline right there.
yeah, just a goofy
You
stuff.
never know.
Yeah, no, and then his sidekick was gonna be Kim Jong Un.
Kim Jong.
So if Adult Swim, if you're listening, um, no, but so the Realist Bayani, it's a Filipino street hero. Like I've been looking at the Instagram and everything, and the way the fans and everyone's talking about it is like this is our first street hero. So I know
Mm,
that representation is a big deal to you. So like, can you expand on like what that means
right.
in terms, you know?
So like I've been collecting comics since like the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like 1989, I was in kindergarten. My first comic book was a What If Marvel book. And since then, like I just really like was following comics because like it was like a real thing back in the days. Like you were collecting basketball cards, you were reading comic books, and you were listening to hip hop. That's like what somewhat of the holy trinity of like and clothes too. Like fashion's always up in there. But you know, like I was collecting comic books for like a minute, and then I fell in love with hip hop. And as time went on, I ended up having a form of my artiste as Mark Marvel. So I was doing a lot of hip hop, but I grew up in Brooklyn, so it wasn't like
Were you born in Brooklyn, or were you born in
a
this country?
nerd rapper. I
Yeah.
was born in Sunset Park, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you first generation, second?
I'm first generation.
Okay. So
Yeah.
okay, so
So
that
first
must
generation would be the ones born as from the parents that landed, right?
yeah, like we've had a lot of talks about it. It's either I think it's just the first generation that grows up in this country, so it's like even if you immigrate and you're like 6 years old, you're still first generation, or like it's a whatever. So the fact that you're first generation informs how you read comic books, right? So like I know that we kind of touched on
Yeah.
this before, but like if you're reading comic books, you're not necessarily relating fully to the characters as maybe your peers, as your white peers might be, right? Relating to the characters because like this is not really a representation of me or my cousins, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like, were you seeking out as a kid?
Right. 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 Yeah.
Like, are you seeking like as a kid? How actively are you seeking out brown faces?
Very like I mean, at that time, you're growing up, you're already colonized with the ideas of history and everything. Like you're already kind of immersed in the white man found America,
Yeah.
and they tried to be cool with the Indians, but they couldn't for some reason. So you kind of learn these vague, I'm not looking for a brown superhero because the superhero Superman and Batman and
Right.
Spider-Man and Flash, Green Lantern already, all white characters. So you're looking at this, like that's the heroes. Like, like I never saw a brown hero besides maybe a black hero like Black Panther or like Luke Cage or you Storm.
Right. What kind of
Storm
effect does that have?
was kind of like one of the first black I saw.
Yeah.
Watched our entertainment was growing up. He-Man, like Thundercats wasn't even like, they were looking white and it was like, what the hell, Panthro? Why couldn't they make Panther like the black? Why is he blue? Like, like so like growing up and collecting all this stuff, like, as I emerged into my own in hip hop and I went from Mark why am I rapping about all these characters where I have to put Philippine Wolverine or like, Filipino Asian Charles Xavier, like, and none of them are matching my genetics. It's like I evolved and said, you know what? I'm not even gonna. I remember somebody saying this, like it was one of those like trolls kind of guys, like, and he was like, "Bro, I just see you capitalizing on Marvel Comics. Make your own shit." And next thing you know, I made the Realest Bayani, and I was no longer Mark Marvel anymore. And I took my actual name, Mark Teodosio, because I felt like it's time for legacy. It's time for, like the professionalism of authorship versus, hey, I rap. It's like, nah, I'm me now. Now I'm who my father set me out to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of power in that. I talked to Fani about that a lot before, about like how he should just start his own. He needs to start his own Twitter, even as like a small step, because there's that thought of like when you're growing up and when you're like become mature and coming into your own, it's like correspondence from the desk of, you know, it's like this is my desk, and the communications that come out of here and come into here, I am accountable for all of those, like everything that goes in, my word is only as good as it can be. And so if I have this structure and I'm pushing out information and receiving information, and the name that's on it, it's not some pseudonym, because I'm Brooklyn Santa on social media and everything. So even then there's like that,
Yeah, word. I would have never expected Brooklyn Santa to be or you're Indian, right?
Yeah.
To be an Indian kid, I would have never thought that. Like, what the hell? Who's this? This Brooklyn Santa? Like on Instagram, I seen it.
Right, and then that's a whole thing. Like,
right.
And we met at the at one of these events, markets, so a Filipino market for food market. Project Barcata, and that's like, love what they do, because they're pulling together different artists and food vendors and everything and creating a vibe and really just like solidifying the Filipino community in New York. And I think that
what's mad important about that, right? Like what's so super important about that is that it's the timing.
The timing?
The timing right now, like, East Coast, yeah, the timing. Like we're talking about like the Filipino demographic. Yeah. We weren't as united before this, but the food movement united like a lot of people. Like that brought out a lot of other aspects of the culture. So like for myself being in the mix, like it's crazy because growing up, I never had Filipinos around me. I was raised with Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Mexicans, in Sunset. It's like sub-Latin America. So I'm raised with them. And it's like, I didn't even have an identity. I'm like, they were calling me Chino, you know what I'm saying? And I was like,
wow.
And it's like, nah, that's, until Pacquiao came out, that was the only way I could solidify where I came from. Before Pacquiao, there was really no Filipino representation. Like, I mean, we had like Ernie Reyes, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and who else was there? Rufio, right? Peter Pan.
Rufio.
He was Filipino.
Fritz Zuko.
Yep, he's Filipino.
Yeah.
And the representation was vague. It wasn't strong. It wasn't announced. Like today, like we're now, like Wakanda had a Filipino at the scenes, and the designer also made Baby Groot, and they highlighted it like, yo, a Filipino guy added his cultural influence to Wakandan, like the girls, like the tattoos, all those styles,
Yeah.
originally Filipino, like or inspired by Filipino culture. I don't want to say, because Africans were
Right.
also indigenous and tribal and based on tattoos and war paint and stuff. So we all connect. But in the timing right now, what I'm saying is, in the timing, I feel like it's all brown, black, all peoples that come from the children of the sun, right? Of this
Right.
like melanin, that one chemical in us that Caucasians lack, and it's like, all right, we all have this. So what's up with that? Like, what's up
Right.
with that survival instinct under the sun? Like, what is up with this secret chemical inside of our bodies that's charged by the sun and other aspects of that nature? Like, there's a lot of things that need to be unlocked genetically just through melanin alone.
Right.
That's a crazy signature inside of us as a species. But the timing, I said, wasn't just the food. It was more like a spiritual tribe thing. So now if you look at a lot of the Filipinas, the females, they're
Yeah.
really in tune with
Sorry, we're breaking up.
with practices. They've studied, like, the aspects of stones. Staten Island.
Yeah, I got like the whole last part of that just jumbled.
Facts. They don't want me to share our progress as a people. They're
You're
like,
speaking too dangerously.
let's pirate their frequencies. So
We're getting
so like the
colonized right now.
like the women of the Filipinos are very empowering, like very empowering and
Yeah,
focused too. They're so focused in the spiritual aspects. Like the men, I'm not going to say much for them, but we're really in the arts. You'll notice us
yeah,
as painters, clothing,
yeah,
fashion people, break dancers, producers like Illmind. The art of language, Joe Coy. Joe Coy is dominating in the comedian as in
yeah,
field. Jabberwocky's in the dance realm. And Miss Universe, let's get it. You know what I'm saying? Filipina, Panay. So the power of the Filipino tribe is reemerging, and it's
yeah,
and and we're speaking against the oppression of lost identity, the diaspora of the people. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the aim of what we want to do here. And right now it's just a podcast or whatever. But it's like, when we think about Return the Jewels, the 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 thought that's getting really popular now is that like everything you see in a museum is stolen, right?
Facts. Yeah,
Right.
that's dope.
All the crown jewels stolen. All the wealth that is speculated based on the speculated wealth based off of the existence of the crown jewels being in possession stolen. Like all of that. And so
Mm.
it's not just physical like it's not just material wealth. If you think about that, there's like think about all the mental properties and intellectual properties that were probably like taken. Appropriation is really a thing. Like, why is appropriation a thing now? You know,
It's been a thing since the beginning of time. The Romans
like,
were biting every single culture they conquered, taking little pieces of it,
mm,
even all the way down to Christianity. All the way down to Christianity. They stole Christianity from they had a pagan pantheon before. They
bro.
stole from the Greeks,
Mm-hmm.
and after they took over the Greek Empire or whatever, the Christians were a problem. They were a faction that followed after the Messiah, supposedly. Not everyone believes that, but he was a prophet that spoke and said, there's self-savior, there's a God inside you. And it's all
And every
about awakening
century,
that and tapping into.
yeah, and every century, his skin got a little lighter.
Yeah, facts. And his hair got a little bit more finer, per
Yeah,
plus herbal essence. Jesus,
bleaching
can't
cream.
believe can't believe it's not butter. Jesus.
Yo, you know what I think is strange? You know how people are so convinced, right, in their religion and whatever, and they're just like, this is the way. um there we know in literature and collectively we know that everybody in the world or whatever believed in Mount Olympus before. Like that was the way before, you know? So it's
Right.
like maybe take these things with a grain of salt. Like
but if there was any
oh no.
ancient religions that were dated, Hinduism, like all of that stuff was also a knowledge that was, opened up into the Philippines with the Rajas, there was Indian royalty, crossing over, and
Right.
they had islands too, and you'll see a lot of Filipinas or Filipinos that somewhat have Indian features, because
Yeah.
of the royalty that landed out there, you know. You'll see a lot of history like that. But it's all like Philippines is like a melting pot. We're like Asian, Spanish, and African, so it's like so crazy. It's like I didn't even have that much pride in being Filipino until I wrote the Realest Bayani and needed to really tap into the motherland.
But that was
I
only a
was like,
couple of years ago.
yeah, right, exactly.
So what was
So
that?
it
What
was a
what
late
caused that?
blooming, but it was worth it because
Oh no, did we pause again?
just right, like first of all, I live in things like well, I'm not there every day. Am I back?
Wait. Yes. Okay.
Right. Oh, is it? It's seven. I got 2 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, we
Um.
gotta be real quick.
So I
So
was
so
gonna
just
say.
yeah.
So I was just gonna end it. So it was really just like what caused it was the necessity of sharing knowledge, and it can't be false, and it can't be a like culture. Like it has to be authentic, true history.
Yeah. Yeah, because and I think to close out, uh we kind of had Fonny and I kind of had a similar thing in our 30s, just like, yo, we've been denying our culture and our cultural identity for so long. And why? Because we grow up and we're like otherized and we're made fun of, but
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
reason for it, right? There's
But
no
you guys are
reason.
South Pacific. You guys are South Pacific Asians too.
Yeah, like, dude, we're all a melting pot, and it's just like, yo,
You
skin and
in
features
the
and all this
same
stuff.
box as me,
Yeah, but I mean,
the
yeah,
Brown brothers. Hey,
but anyways, yeah, I know time was really tight. We appreciate you coming on for a minute. We'll do this again when
yeah,
we can set
definitely.
it up proper, right, and do more work into it. But thank you for coming on and giving us just a little bit of your time. And we like I said, we want to have these cool conversations and talk more about the comic book world because I know that shit is mad racist, man. Like, like looking at it now as an adult, it's like, yo, why do all the white people have square jaws and all the villains have ethnic features?
Yeah. Definitely. Star Wars too. Star Wars did the same thing. You know, but
But yeah,
it's another combo. They scared of the dark side. That's what it is. They scared of the dark side.
darks.
Yo, love.
Yo, Mark,
Um, Pani, we could definitely gonna chop it up again, brothers.
absolutely, and hit me up whenever. I'll come take pics. Let's
For
get some
sure, for
promo.
sure, brother. All right, man. Keep inspiring, empowering, and correcting all the stuff that needs correction, bro.
Yes, sir. You too.
All
Godspeed.
right, I'll see you. All right, peace.
All right. Peace. Okay, so that was Mark. We only had a few minutes with him. He's a very busy man. I mean, the dude creates comic books. He raps. He does a lot of things. You should look him up. We put his info there. But the series is called the Realest Bayani. His name is Mark Teodosio. Mark Marvel is the hip hop name, which we talked about for a second.
Mhm.
Fonny was there the whole time, and so right now I've got him here with us, and I guess we're just gonna like talk about what we tried to talk about because his connection was he's out in Staten Island, so the connection wasn't really that good. He said that. I'm just repeating what he said. but
Right. No, I think it was like a scheduling conflict, but
yeah,
it was a good, quick conversation, and I think we hit on a lot of important stuff, like especially with the appropriation and how Philippines being a melting pot, and how he didn't really find his cultural identity until much recently, growing up in Sunset Park in
right.
Brooklyn, especially in the Latin community. Being referred to as just like being Chinese when he didn't really have somebody to connect
Right.
with and show his identity until like Manny Pacquiao came on the scene, and then it was like, oh, there's a
No, that's
Filipino.
crazy. I was gonna say like think about that because I'm always focused on the South Asian stuff or whatever. So
Hmm.
like our first representation was Cal Penn pretty much, or our generations. So it's like Manny Pacquiao was their Kumar
Yeah, basically, right? That's like huge.
basically.
Yeah,
Right,
I
and like
mean,
this dude's on top of the world, of course, of course, whether you like whatever his political beliefs or whatever may be, of course, the people that look like him and that have the same cultural history are gonna rock with him. Like that's the thing about that's the other side of representation that I don't think people really take too much account into, right? Like
hmm
when people are branding, they think, "Oh, you're just being a token," or "Oh, you're just trying to do lip service to diversity." But it's also like there's real good, like power, like good in representation, in that you can mobilize people, and that like young people like Mark seeing Manny Pacquiao on the world stage can have a thought in his head, like such a grand thought of I'm going to create my own comic book world, and he did.
right,
Like, right? He talked about it for a second in the interview about making like spoofs of Marvel characters like the Filipino Superman, the Filipino Batman, and someone was trolling him and was just like, "Why don't you make your own comic book world?" And
which is
you
a
know,
crazy thing to say too, right? I mean, you don't like we haven't been conditioned to think that we can have people from our culture be heroes also. I mean, we're always looked upon
mm-hmm,
culturally anyway as being inferior, or
yeah,
compared to the other superheroes that you see in comic books today. Like you don't see like an Asian Batman. There's no
yeah.
such thing as
No,
like
and
a
that's the thing. Like we even talked about that for a minute. Like when he's growing up, he's just like, "Oh yeah, these are the heroes: Aquaman, Superman, Batman.
right,
These are just the heroes. They're white dudes." But it's like you don't think about that. And he's like, he was touching on the thought of like melanin being the thing that unites us, and it's like, what is this element, the secret chemical in us that's supercharged by the sun? I think that's a really dope thought.
yeah, that
Like,
was super
right,
super on
like
point.
I
Like,
think he could pull out like a real cool fantasy comic thing from that,
I
because
mean, that
that's really cool.
that's like something that, like, I mean, I never thought about it until he said it, but it is something that unites us as like
It is
like the
right. Like
sun
now is the time for
warrior mentality.
intersectionality, but it just so happens that intersectionality is runs on the opposite spectrum of the racism color swatch. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like intersectionality comes with more melanin, and racism comes with more melanin.
True.
But um, one thing I wanted to get into, and we're definitely gonna have Mark back, and we want to get into like doing panels and stuff with this, and like maybe talk to other comic book creators, and we absolutely want to have Mark on that to talk about his because I mean, just for the few minutes we had him on and him running us through like the like his history of colonization in different places, and how like just the mixing, especially like in the Philippines, and how gender is kind of flipped
Yeah,
with
he really touched on like so many different things that
but
we need
just
to
so
like.
quickly because he only had like 2 minutes, and
Yeah,
I feel bad because like you know to the two people that watch this, you guys have been trained to have like an hour and a half of interview, but that we're gonna have him on again. But like he did touch on a lot of things, and we'll link literature and stuff
and
to
that's
this episode.
another thing he did mention was the food
Yeah,
bringing people together, especially the Filipino food movement, and how he incorporates that even into his comics. That I thought was a very interesting aspect of his narrative, because
yeah.
it's something that just came about in the past couple of years,
I
living in
mean,
New York City.
we met through a food event, through the market, pop-up market that was
All
done by
right,
Project
yeah.
Barcada. Yeah, and it's like the food is the thing that unites. You don't know who's an artist, who's a consumer, who's who,
And
but
just
it's
for our
like,
viewers, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? How was that experience?
okay, yeah, yeah. So I'll talk about how we came to this episode. So we're on episode 10, which is kind of cool. So thank you for supporting us all the way. Um, we got to 10 episodes. It's kind of cool. But like, my group of friends or whatever that we've been booking mostly is just like comedians, and I've been trying to branch out because I'm just generally very curious about different um, professions and different how people navigate their different professions and just like what they're thinking, because I'm always trying to think about what other people are thinking. And
Hmm.
so I really want to know about the comic book world, because I had like a tweet the other day. I was just thinking about something. I had a thought that came to my head, and I was like, Bruce Wayne probably believes in phrenology. And
Right.
phrenology is like that racist pseudoscience where they study the shape of skulls.
Hmm.
And that's how they say that people are inferior of different races because they don't have mental capacity or whatever. It's some dumb shit. And I was thinking, Bruce Wayne, yeah, Bruce Wayne probably believes in that. He, billionaire, I'm sure, like his family has Holocaust money. Like it's the Court of Owls. They're all rich billionaire white families. Bruce is indoctrinated into that. He's probably homeschooled. Alfred himself is suspect. So it's like, of course, Bruce Wayne probably believes in phrenology. He does his thing. And then so I tweeted that out, and our
But
friend,
how does
huh?
that work though? Because he did go to like Asia and like learn all this super like
Yeah, yeah, he went to
skill.
Asia. Like he went to Asia, like a lot of rich white people go to Asia on safari. He went on safari, but like, yeah, he trained with Ra's al Ghul. Of course, that dude's probably got some like thoughts on eugenics and all of that stuff. But like, I put that tweet out there, and then my friend, he retweeted it with an excerpt from something from Marvel, and he's like, "Yeah, Marvel is like this too, where they got some racist practices, and it's just kind of suspect because you think about it, like the DC illustrators, and I touched on this at the end of the interview earlier, are like the heroes. They're all white. They all have square jaws, justice faces, right?
Hmm.
The villains all have beady ethnic eyes like me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, I've always wondered that, and it's like, you know, even me wanting to like go to Comic Con when I was a kid, and just like, oh yeah, what character could I dress up as? Oh, there's nothing really there, and I'm sure Mark has gone through a lot of that stuff as a kid, and the fact that he said what really stuck with me from this interview was the fact that he said he really got into his identity stuff only a few years ago when he made this character. It's only new. This is all very new. And he exceeded his Kickstarter goals. The community is really rocking with him, and like Comic-Con, like this dude is on the rise because he's building a movement. You know, the character he made, the world that he's building and making, the fictional world for his character is bigger than him.
Right.
And so it's not about his name or whatever. It's about the community itself, and that's reflected in his work, right? So like, yeah, I met him at the Project Barcada thing. It was like the Halloween pop-up market in Jackson Heights, and I was just taking pictures because I'm rolling with my friend Chef Harold, who we had an episode too.
Hmm.
Who's a new, he's a new on-air talent chef for Bon Appetit magazine and all that stuff. So he's getting a lot of looks, and his personality is finally getting a big platform to shine through because he's got a lot of personality, right? So, but
Right.
anyways, we're doing this. We were at this market. I met Mark, all this stuff, but like the sense of community is wild, right? Everyone's Filipino. They have all these stalls from the different restaurants. So people from the restaurants are there working, and there's the lines are insane in a pandemic, right?
Hmm.
The lines are insane, and it's not just chefs that are at the stalls, right? It's people like Mark that are creatives. There's DJs, there's artists, everyone. They're just selling their wares, but they're also energizing the community. I'm sure they're like setting up different relationships and business whatevers for later. It's there's really a reward in building and energizing a community, especially if you grow up feeling like you've been not part of one, right? We touched on this for just a second, but like, yeah, being made fun of or whatever and otherized as a kid, we don't really like to talk about our ethnic stuff because there's, whatever, nah, I don't want to say trauma, but, being stigmatized in the past that's going to make us apprehensive now than doing ethnic. But then you got like people doing yoga, selling turmeric lattes for $8. You know, all that ethnic stuff we've denied even talking about or doing. Other people have created whole markets out of because they don't have that internalized stigma growing up, right? So the what Mark represents is something I believe is very incredible because he is taking back this market for his community.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
You know, there's a
and he's
Filipino street hero. The food is authentic that they eat in the comic, right? The
yeah,
language they use, the different everything is authentic, but it's born out of a like, yo, I am portraying this and I'm giving information to the masses, right? Like what I wanted to ask, and you can talk on this, is like because we've been having this conversation for a little bit now, but like the younger you, right?
hmm,
The younger 15-year-old Fani, right? Being shown these two different comics, one with like an Indian superhero and like the language and all this stuff, and like Batman, right? You're probably gonna grab. Sure, you'll like the Batman thing because everyone's got those toys. But what do you think it will be within that 15-year-old you that compels you to want the other comic?
as opposed to going for the Batman, I think
Yeah, the newest Batman, the brand newest Batman that's a very hot item.
that's a very interesting point, and I don't I don't want to say like
I
it
might
would
pick the Batman if I'm
anybody would
15
pick
year
the
old me.
Batman,
If I'm
like
15-year-old me, I'd probably pick the Batman, and I'd feel like shit about it as 33-year-old me in retrospect.
yeah. I mean, that's what it's hard to because at that age you also want to just be you know a part of that crowd, and at that point in time we didn't really have any good representation. We still don't. um but if you're asking whether I'd go back in time and if there was a Filipino hero such as the Realest Bayani, I mean that thing looks dope as hell.
Oh my
uh
god, yeah, it does. By the way, it
I
really
mean,
does. The artwork is great. These guys, yeah.
so I would probably pick, like the Realist Bayani, like if I had the option, but there was no good other character. There was no, I mean, there's no like the The
The
one
only
thing about
Indian supernatural character or South Asian supernatural character that we ever had was Dal Sim, and
right,
the guy only had 3 words in his vocabulary: fire, flame, and yoga.
and he wasn't exactly a superhero. Like, let's be honest, he was
No,
just
no, he was basically the same. He was basically Amrish Puri from Temple of Doom. Again, they might as well have made him eat monkey brains. They might as well have made Dalsim eat monkey brains.
Dude, imagine there was like a Amrish Puri like
Rest in
superhero
peace.
figure. Like
Amrish Puri was a superhero. I should actually read more about him because from what I remember, when he was alive, that he was like a very philanthropic. But I could be wrong. He could have been a complete asshole. He played a lot of villains because he definitely had that villainy vibe.
yeah, for sure. I think he was also like one of Spielberg's like favorite villains, like or something. I read
That's
somewhere.
incredible. Yeah, and then
Uh,
George Lucas is just like, "What do Indians eat? Monkey brains? Cool. Yeah, let's do that. Sure, that won't stick with their kids. Kids won't make fun of brown kids about eating monkey brains when in
yeah,
reality they're all vegetarian."
yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I mean, like, you, I wasn't having this conversation with you. I was having a conversation with Gabe Pacheco, my friend. He's a comedian. We're gonna have him on eventually, about how, like, initially with representation, you always get these first few, things that aren't so super authentic, right? It's just like fan service, right? And people are like, oh, they're tokens. But the conversation we're having is like, you've got to probably, that needs to exist so that you can develop nuance out of it, right? So the fact that Mark, growing up, can't even be identified in his peer group as Filipino because there's not that much personal representation around him,
Hmm.
right? And they say, oh, you're Chinese. Just the fact that that is the case means that he, knowing that, has to overcorrect around this age, around our age, in our 30s, and lean into learning his identity because you grow up being denied it,
Yeah,
right?
and not like I guess not just even denied it, but just well, first there's a couple problems, right? One, you don't even know like what your identity really is because you just want to fit in with everybody that's around you. So you're automatically like just trying to relate to different cultures that's around you, and you can't even identify with some of the like like the racial slur of him being like a Chinese person, like that just doesn't even make sense in the first place. But it forces you to think about um like how ridiculous that whole idea is, that we grow up in this culture where we're in the one place in the world. This is Brooklyn we're talking about. So like imagine growing up outside somewhere like in some Midwest location where there isn't even like that many like Chinese people. Like I grew up, like in a place where at least there were a few Indian people around, you know.
In
So
Alabama.
no, I didn't grow up in Alabama. I grew up in Michigan. I was in Alabama like my senior year of high school, and
Oh,
like yeah, then I was like the only Indian kid around, which was very weird and different. But
yeah. I mean, tell me about
but I mean, even when I first moved here, like from India itself, it was hard for me to relate to the Indian people here growing up because they grew up so different from like what I was used to.
Yeah. No, I mean, we both met when I was 18. You were like 17,
Yeah,
I think, and yeah, and
just
we
about.
didn't really relate well.
because like I didn't grow up with like the same kind of stuff that you like the TV shows you're watching or like
Yeah.
these even like the comic book world or like the video games and stuff. Like I remember, um, like the first time I played like Super Mario Brothers or something. Like I still today to
It
this
was
day
probably in my
suck at
dorm room.
like like suck at playing video games.
Yeah.
But like yeah, um, because with that immigrant mentality, you just like kind of taught to like stay away from stuff like that's extraneous to your like learning or whatever,
Yeah.
and you know, um,
Yeah, that's something I wish I could have talked to him more about, but we will. Just like because he was saying in the culture, the Filipino women really hold it down in terms of like business and stuff, and the men are more like artistic and
artistic,
creative,
yeah,
right? Because like in our culture, kind of, it's like the room for artisticness and creativity is not. It's not so much supported, you know. Like
yeah.
it's praised, but not supported.
No, absolutely, and that definitely not by the average like Indian person. I mean, if you're coming from like a family that's been performing in the arts and stuff, then yeah, you definitely get that support. But otherwise, you kind of forced to think in terms of practicality as opposed to like ideals and dreams and stuff. Like how, and especially if you're an immigrant or like a first generation kid, like your parents just force this idea of security on you, like like do
Yeah,
something where you can make a living out of, and pursuing the arts isn't exactly on the table because it's considered more of like a luxury type of thing. Like you
bro.
have to have
We talked about this. Where like growing up, when you're a kid, people ask you, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I'd always say?
what
Financially secure.
did you? Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
we did. What do you
like
want to be when you grow up? Financially secure.
like
Still
I
haven't grown up.
well, I mean, you had your chance to be that, but I think you're just like naturally gravitating towards a different calling entirely.
Towards my never landing.
Yeah,
Neverland.
that
I'm on that. I had what was it? That it's like the problem with like never landing. You know what I mean by that? Like
yeah,
Neverland, like
like the
Peter Pan.
Peter Pan syndrome.
Yeah, yeah, they never grow up. It's like so. It's like the problem with never landing so much is that you never land, and it's like, oh, is that corny? That's kind of corny,
That is, but I mean, you know what? Like though,
but
if
it's
you
like,
if you could really have the way I see it is there's two ways to have this problem, right? You could have the problem you're having right now, and or you could have the problem where you've done everything and you're financially secure, but you just like hate your life, like you absolutely drudge going into work. You don't, you're
yeah,
just you're in like this just toxic like mentality where it's just like what am I doing, like what did I even want to do, and then like trying to find yourself but like not being able to even do that, because if you're an average Indian person at that age group, you already have kids, and like you're already like struggling to like get them on their feet and stuff. And like if you take a step back and you look at those two different situations, like I think the place you're in is actually kind of dope to be in because you still have a lot of room to grow, as opposed to like you already like got to a certain place and then you don't even know if you can go forward, because you can't go forward anymore without moving like 100 steps back.
yeah,
And
yeah, because
that's something
sometimes
like
you don't even know what forward is. Um,
right.
yeah. Uh, Without being too cryptic, I think if anybody's listening or watching, we're kind of talking about the creative direction of this podcast slash brand. It's like we've been I guess, what do you call them, internal strategy meetings that we've been having a lot, and just trying to figure out like what we want to do with this. I want to take this into more of like because these conversations are very heady and very heavy, or they're turning out to be. They're not so lighthearted as I thought they would be initially, and I think that we could.
Well, I mean, did you really ever think they would be like we were
Well,
talking
kind
about?
of. I mean, like like we're just getting comedians on initially. Like my friends are comedians. We got banter because we're friends. But like yeah, these conversations are getting really heady and heavy. I listen to the things over these episodes over again, and I do feel like a sense of like existential dread about the kind of things that we talk about. And then what we're lacking in our brand is a call to action. And the thing is, between you and me, we won't we won't create a call to action for anything unless we're unless it's truly grounded in substantiated in research, and like we really believe in the thing we're calling to action for. So but this podcast, like, the thought process has always been, not even with the podcast, but just in these conversations in general that I've actively been trying to have for years, is that we need to decode coded language.
Hmm.
Language is precision. People weaponize their rhetoric, people weaponize bad logic. And maybe this is kind of a place for us to like explore all those avenues of logic that people use in bad faith, and just kind of like contextualize it in from the point of view of melanated peoples. It's just kind of like, because you never get that point of view. You see a lot of melanin on screen, but it's not a lot of melanin that drives the dialogue of that. you know so it's like, Mark was kind of touching on that, because it's like you want to see more with the representation. You want to see more behind the scenes stuff, right? And it's not just behind the scenes stuff when it comes to like production or directors or writers. No, it's more about framing, right? Framing different arguments, framing how different, marginalized communities are perceived, because perception is the thing that drives action, right? So if we flip pejorative language, either take ownership or flip it, then it's like we're actively reworking the programming gone into otherizing people.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of like how I think about what we could do with this podcast. We have these long form conversations. I know we got to start making like a newsletter, stuff like that. And we really got to like, I don't know, I just have a lot of anxiety because I know that the road is long and daunting, and I just need to know like what basket to put these eggs in.
I think it's in terms of, you know, whenever we're going to have a conversation about what it means to be a first generation American of immigrant parents or an immigrant itself, these are
Yeah.
going to be heady discussions. We're not going to be, getting into like light material. And it's not too off brand to say, like it's still thought provoking in the sense that just based on the conversation we had today, like what does it mean for even like let's say why isn't there an Indian superhero? What, like how does that make you feel? Like like should there be one? Like like does it kind of make you feel like oh like maybe I could come up with something? Like we have all these like mythological stories that come from the past. And there's so many cultural references even in India itself that allude to superhuman powers that I think filtered into a lot of comic book heroes. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
100%. I
but
mean,
we
shit,
don't.
not even
But
comic book heroes in our movie fiction. Legend of Bagger Vance. Bagger Vance is Krishna, right?
yeah, like a lot of that comes
That
from the
good?
Bhagavad
No,
Gita. Like I know because I think
not that guy. That's you. No, that's Krishna.
Stephen Pressfield is the guy that wrote that, and he actually references the Bhagavad Gita a lot. Um, like one of
Yeah.
his maxims that he uses is you're entitled to the work, not the fruits of the work that you do. And I think just that mentality itself is
Like
kind of
Dhara,
like, yeah, it's like a
Dharma,
superhuman
Dharam, Dharma.
kind of trait to have. It's a way of thinking about the world, but it's not like I don't have that much anxiety about like the direction we're going in, because I'm kind of proud that we have this platform to discuss these issues that no one's
Yeah.
talking about so intensely now. But I mean,
Yeah, you
we're
want to know something funny?
what?
Um, when this idea started, right? When I made the logo and all the stuff, I would show it to people.
Hmm.
Everyone brown, black, Asian, whatever, instantly. Oh, because you see the queen with the criminal bar. My white friends were like, "Oh, that's so cool! It's like Sex Pistols, but like, what does it mean?"
Yeah.
And so, like, every time without fail, that's what it was. It was like, "Oh, huh? Maybe there's something to it." Yeah, I'm proud too. I'm proud that we have this, that we're talking about these things nobody really does talk about. I mean, we do talk about them, but we don't. It's not a mainstream thing to talk about. Because it's like anytime you try to broach these kind of conversations, they get kind of um, minimized with different logical fallacies and trolling tactics, right? It's just like gaslighting, whatever, whatever. But it's just like different ways to tell you, like, oh, these things that you're talking about in these conversations about race, microaggressions, whitewashing, all this stuff is not necessarily real.
Hmm.
And so it's like when you can have these conversations with other first generation people or other people that grew up, and then just kind of pull out, like, oh shit, we got analogous experiences, huh? Why is that?
Can't be the melanin in our skin, obviously.
Anal melanin melan melanated analogs. No, that's dumb. That's corny.
I mean, it's definitely a track that I want to keep pursuing for
Yeah,
sure. Um,
yeah. I mean, we're only on episode 10.
and plus, we're still finding our voice, and like it's not.
I'm really excited though about these panels. Like, I want to. By panels, I mean like discussion panels. Like for instance, episode 2, we had Chef Harold on, and we talked about the brigadier system,
Mhm.
Escoffier system, where it's like fine dining. It's got a military hierarchy of the kitchen, and that the existence of that and like the using of that has like marginalized black or brown people, cooks or whatever, and let different ethnic foods and different cultures be appropriated through fine dining because of this military system. So like something like that, if we do like a panel with other chefs and kind of like just like moderate it, I guess, and like get help guide the discussion and just try to like log the data about those kind of things. I would see, I'm like excited about going in that kind of direction with this thing, because it's like, we don't necessarily just have to have panels of just chefs, like we could have a panel of comic book creators like Mark and other friends. We have a panel of comedians, like a few of the different guests we've had. just talking about different things in the industry and representation, because we do circle back around to representation a lot, but like different things. Like I want to get doctors. I got access to mad doctors. I'm pretty sure you got access to mad finance people. So like we could those be two different panels, like things like that. That's kind of what excites me about this brand is. The work is daunting. We just set up a Patreon, but I mean, I'm not gonna push that until like I put a lot more stuff in it. But there is a donation mechanism there at our Patreon. Just look up Return the Jewels. I think it's patreon.com/return the jewels. It might not be, but you could probably Google it. But there's definitely a donation mechanism there. But I'm not gonna push it, but not until we have like exclusive content for them. But if you want to donate, there is a donation mechanism there. Just saying. But yeah, no, like I don't know, man. I don't know. I just have like anxiety about how we like grow this and get this out there. And I want to get bigger guests. I want to have these like I appreciate all the guests we have. And they're my friends, and I know them in person. But it's like I want to get like I want to crack the brains of people who are making like who are framing issues. I want to know how they think, and I want the people that listen to this to get insight into how people think. You know,
Hmm.
I would have loved this when I was a 20-year-old. I would have sopped up all these episodes. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we'll get there. I think, hopefully. But it's also more just like not just like bigger guests, but just guests that are doing even like normal kind of jobs and stuff, but like how growing up here shaped their current situation and where they are,
yeah,
and how they feel about the future of
yeah,
their like kids, and how they want to groom their kids to function in society, or are they allowing them like one of something that I always think about is going into like the second generation and stuff. Do you afford the second generation more freedom for like creative endeavors and stuff? Like, do you
I had a thought today that like uh, being jaded is a privilege of the second generation and beyond.
so
So first generation, we don't necessarily get to be jaded because we kind of have to figure out our way, right? Like the immigrant generation, they survive,
right?
right? They make sure to set up a nest egg for the first generation, right? And help support the first generation achieve what they want. But the first generation has to do a lot of like thinking, like the creative thinking about like what different things to do, right? That's why it's like the immigrant generation wants the first generation to be doctors and whatever, because the thinking has already been done.
Hmm.
You have a path, right? So a lot of the crazy creativity comes out of the first generation because it's an active rejection of those set forward paths, because those come from a mentality of survival, right? So we got a mentality of rebellion and creativity. What is a mentality of second generation, right? So I think that the second generation is probably more prone to being jaded about things, taking more things for granted, right? Maybe not necessarily picking up on microaggressions and different racial undertones of things as easily, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe being jaded is a privilege of the second generation and beyond.
It's an interesting thought.
But that's probably where we should end the episode. I mean, we've gone on. We had a short interview on this one, but we're still figuring out our voice. We really do. Uh, I really appreciate that. We could get Mark on. That was great because I really wanted to know that thing. Like it really does kind of bug me about comic books. And so it's like just to know that there are people out there that are uplifting their communities and being authentic and doing real work to push the needle forward in terms of
Hmm.
representation is uplifting. and yeah, more people should try to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think people should definitely check out his comic, The Realest Bayani.
Yeah,
Really dope artwork, and it's like a crazy cool concept. And you
and
can follow.
contributing artists too. He's starting
Yeah,
a movement.
absolutely.
So, anyways, dope. I'm gonna end this episode. You got anything you want to say?
No, thanks for like I guess having Mark on. It was I wish we can get
We're
him
at 10
on for
episodes.
longer.
You got any?
Um,
You got any introspection feedback? We're at 10 episodes.
I think we just gave our introspection
All right,
feedback.
yeah, good. That's the answer I wanted. That's right. We keep things tight here. All right. Cool. Peace.